First Man is directed by Academy Award winner Damien Chazelle and stars Ryan Gosling as Neil Armstrong in the lead up to the Apollo 11 mission. Unlike a lot of other space movies, this film is obsessed with keeping things grounded and realistic. The character interactions and dialogue are all natural. Never does the drama feel melodramatic like in The Right Stuff, and unlike Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks, you really feel like these rockets could fall apart at any moment. There's nothing glamorous about the technical stuff in this film. This movie's primary focus is on Neil Armstrong's journey from the moment that made him decide he wanted to be an astronaut to actually landing on the moon in 1969. And rather than necessarily being about the big historical event, First Man tries to offer a glimpse into the personal life of Neil Armstrong and the effects that his astronaut training and eventual mission ends up having on his family. It's a film that I imagine is deeply personal for the Armstrong family, as this is based on Neil Armstrong's official biography, although there are some moments where creative liberty is utilised by Damien Chazelle for the sake of bigger emotional payoff for Neil Armstrong. I didn't mind these historical changes because I think the film earns them, but I'm sure some of the historical accuracy in the film might irritate some people. In all honesty, the changes are small but meaningful, and in the grand scheme of the film, everything is fairly accurate to what actually happened. For me, I felt like the film had a little bit of trouble trying to balance out the personal side of Neil Armstrong's life with the real-world historical event of landing on the moon. Because I can imagine if Clint Eastwood, who was originally meant to direct this film, had done so, the focus would have likely been on the Apollo 11 event and maybe less so on Neil's private life. That's not to say that that would have been the best way to go, but I think some rebalancing might have been needed in the edits, as pacing can work against the film. The movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes, but I honestly felt like it had been 3 hours. At times it's just a bit too slow, but First Man does a lot right. There's a strong personal journey for Neil Armstrong throughout the film, as he comes to terms with the event that convinced him to be an astronaut in the first place. Ryan Gosling pulls in a wonderfully subdued performance as Neil. Ryan Gosling has always been a much quieter and introverted actor, and that just happens to be the kind of person Neil Armstrong was in real life. So you have a case of an actor who was really meant to play a certain role. I've heard some people having issues trying to connect with the Neil Armstrong character in the film, because he is portrayed as being so distant to his friends and family, and prefers to be on his own or grieve by himself. But that never got to me. I was fine with him just being the way he was. Neil Armstrong wasn't trying to be the big American hero, but to do the best for others around him. So no, I personally don't have an issue with how Neil Armstrong is portrayed in the film, because I think that just falls in line with how the real man actually was, who had his own way with dealing with things. He experienced his journey on his own terms, and that's fine. And his personality really isn't a far cry from how other men in that era dealt with personal problems. Guys just kept things to themselves. Claire Foy is outstanding in this film, who plays Neil's wife Janet, and almost outshines Ryan Gosling. She absolutely commands a stronger screen presence than Ryan, that's for sure, but we aren't seeing a great deal of emotion from Neil in the movie, so a lot of that falls to Janet, and Claire Foy really brings it in a number of scenes. She's there to care for widows who lose their husbands in missions, while trying to figure out her husband and raise her family. And again, the movie always plays these scenarios as if they're real. Nothing is overplayed, as real life situations should be, which ends up leading to the movie asking what the cost of these NASA missions were, whether it was the literal taxpayer dollars funding the programs, or the lives of the astronauts that were lost in the years leading up to the moon landing. However, the movie often keeps these discussions at surface level, which is disappointing, as I would have liked to have seen some of these discussions fleshed out. But the movie makes it clear that Neil Armstrong always honoured the ones who died, so that the Apollo 11 mission could one day succeed. That being said, I think this film is going to be remembered for the technical side of things, despite all the focus on Neil Armstrong's life. And come Oscar time, I think the technical achievements are what are going to get the most recognition. The space photography and sequences in this movie are breathtaking, as any moment in space with these characters is do or die. Chazelle, for the most part, keeps the camera handheld, and from a human scale. Aside from the Apollo 11 mission, which uses grander IMAX shots for the launch and space photography, most of the footage in the film could realistically be achieved by one of the characters. This leads to space launch sequences feeling claustrophobic and almost nauseating, so Chazelle really nails creating a tense atmosphere, where at many times you feel like these astronauts are walking to their deaths. And it's worth noting that the CG work in the film is phenomenal, especially with how rockets and shuttles are designed. In fact, many of the space sequences are very reminiscent of Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the staging and movements of shuttles is very similar to how ships move in 2001. While Chazelle's longtime composer Justin Hurwitz often utilizes a more classical sounding score for these space sequences, which is just pure 2001. Hurwitz also does some really unique work with the score, incorporating a very eerie use of a theremin to give off some very spooky alien vibes. I will say though that the music is at its best in the second half of the film. That's where the big experimental space themes come into play. So while it's not perfect, First Man is definitely worth your attention, and definitely worth seeing on the big screen for those glorious IMAX shots. It offers a character study on a man who never liked to reveal too much of himself to the world. So whether that's something you connect with or not will depend on you. If you're here to witness the event of the moon landing, you're definitely going to get the big famous moments that you expect. But evidently this film is not about the event, but the astronaut behind that event. First Man gets an 8.7 out of 10 for me. Guys, I hope you liked this review. If you want to see more reviews just like this one, stay right here for your Mono Fix. Bye guys.